founders, it's Christy Bareijsza, and I'm your catalyst to finding her. Let's get started. Hey founders, welcome to Finding Her. My name is Christy Bareijsza, and I am not a life coach, I am not a therapist, I am not a psychologist. I am just a woman in her mid-40s. I know, late 40s, stop telling me. That's just experienced overwhelming changes, both personally and professionally, that led me in places I never thought I'd be in my entire life. But once again, here we are. And as you know, I will continue to make mistakes, and I will do my best to make a few more. But that's what keeps life interesting, and it keeps the stories hilarious. So as I tell these relatable stories, just know that they are coming from my perspective. So, if you're watching this and you're involved in any of these stories, maybe you remember them differently, but they're my stories to tell, and that's the way I'm going to tell them. And so to make a very long story short, what I am more than anything else is just a catalyst for change. And so here we are. Now, we've talked about a bunch of topics, from starting over to forgiveness, to accountability, to development, to building wealth. We've gotten to branding, expansion, silencing the noise. And today we're going to talk about something that might end up being a two-parter. It's called No Expectations. But before we get into that, I want to talk about just the highlights of silencing the noise, because I talk a lot and I just always want to make sure that, we go over the key points, because, I tend to digress and I tend to go all over the place and ping pong here, there, wherever. But there's a reason for those conversations, and there's points to it. So let me just reiterate, that hour that I talked about. Completely silencing the noise. And the number one thing that I think is key to that is deciphering through genuine support and increasing your confidence. So, there's a lot of naysayers, and it's really, I've always been an advocate of quality over quantity. And I just think it's so important to know the difference between friends and frenemies, because a lot of times they'll act like they're your friends and they're just not. And that isn't just for people that that's family. Those are, close relatives, like people that actually are in your inner circle sometimes aren't always the best for you. And just, you're going to know deep down, and if you get that vibe that there's something going on, or you feel like that person isn't backing you 100% when you are making a genuine effort, you have to know the difference and you have to recognize it. And that's critical to really building a team around you of absolute, pure, genuine support, versus it just being, we're here, we're gonna give you that little golf clap, and that's just, it's useless. So, number 2 is creating a judgment-free zone through setting up emotional and physical boundaries. And that's kind of what I just began to talk about, is that if the vibe is off, if you feel like your sixth sense is off, where you feel like that person's either talking behind your back, gossiping, saying that they're supporting you, but then all of a sudden, on one side of the mouth, it's, yeah, go do what you need to do. On the other side, what is she doing? She's making all these mistakes. She's doing this and that. A lot of times when you're making major changes in your life and you're really doing a deep dive, you're getting out of your comfort zone, and you're getting out of the people around you's comfort zone. And you might be okay with those changes, but they might not be. And that's a big no-no, because they are not supporting you in your journey. They are not being there and doing what's in your best interest, as well as they are not loving you unconditionally. And that's a problem. And that's when you have to figure out how to set those boundaries to make sure that your growth is protected. Because we're not joining a cult here. We're not doing anything. When you're working on your inner self, that is something that is, just built by you, cherished by you, grown by you. And if the people around you aren't seeing that and supporting it, or even trying to do it themselves, they got to go. And it doesn't mean that you have to cut them off for life, because it all depends on your tolerance level. Because there's some people that, I go back and forth with this, I should say, because energetically, it's better to completely cut them off. But if this person's like your mother, you're going to be dealing with them the rest of your life, or in some way, shape, or capacity. So, creating those boundaries or those relationships where you are protected in them, and your energy and your aura is protected, in the sense of knowing what that relationship is and managing it efficiently. So, with friendships, I would always say, hey, this person might have just never been your friend to begin with. And if you cut it off and dissolve that friendship, it's a little bit different. But, sometimes there's just, and each relationship is different, and each relationship really kind of needs to have its own case study. But it's one of those things where you have to know where your boundaries are and know what that relationship looks like now. And that relationship might not look like a Lifetime movie or a Hallmark, advertisement or whatever the case is, but that's okay, because this is real. And this is what protects you, and this is what helps you grow and helps you build, because you have gone, when you finally get to this point where you're ready to silence the noise, you have gone through so many steps of just evolution that, believe it or not, it's going to be a lot easier to do, because your tolerance level is going to be a lot less, because you're like, I've already gone through this, and you've built up your self-esteem, you've built up your confidence, you've built up trust in yourself and your own decisions to say, okay, I might have been where I was before because of these surroundings or these choices I've made to have this type of negativity, because unfortunately that's what it is, surround me. So understanding what that is, and creating a judgment-free zone. And judgment-free doesn't mean that people can't have an opinion. And it doesn't mean that they can't disagree with you, because that's different. Because you might see something one way, and that person who does, care about you, love you unconditionally, and is there for your well-being, might see something differently, or see an angle that hasn't presented itself to you. So that disagreement or that objection to something, you need to look at that too. I mean, it's not just a move straight ahead and this is what I'm doing and that's it. It's more of understanding each circumstance, because as I always say, there's a lot of gray areas to situations that aren't so simple to figure out. So when you have that core group around you of friends and family that really are truly, truly rooting for you, that type of response, that type of understanding, that type of conversation is just critical. And if you're able to, cut the loose ends off, it's a game changer. And that's so, so important. Number 3, completely eliminating frenemies, gossip, and negative comments. And that goes back to the boundaries. I mean, popularity isn't really that popular. I mean, I've always said I'd rather have 4 good friends and know that they are there for me through thick and thin than to have 40 acquaintances that aren't for my best interest. And it's okay. And especially too, it's one thing when you're in your 20s, I think, and when you're in college, you're around a lot of peers, so you tend to have a bit more friends or access to going out and doing things with people and traveling and all that good stuff. But as you get older, people get married, they get divorced, they have families, they travel, they leave, and go to a different state, they move, whatever the case is. And your friend group tends to get a little bit smaller. But you don't always have to be in the same city. You don't have to always be in the same town. You don't always have to have the same things in common where you had that same common life your entire life. And that's the great thing about really good friends, or having an inner circle that really is supportive and has your back, that you don't have to talk to them every day, you're able to pick it up right where you left off. And that's pretty amazing. And you're able to talk about things. And you know that when they call, they're it's a real conversation. Or when you call them, it's a real conversation. You're truly there for each other. And that is, it's something really special. And that's it's far more important than just having people around you because you want somebody to go out with or you want to do stuff. Because when you cut all that excess bullshit out, you'll start to see the people that are truly there, and you'll start to travel in circles where you will meet others that are of similar values and support and emotional growth, and it gets you just completely out of your way to build yourself and get to the next level of finding her. And it's okay, because I always say, listen, I am an Aquarius. We thrive on being independent and we thrive on being alone. We like our alone time. It's one of those things. So for me, it's a little bit different. I'm happy hanging out by myself. I can keep myself pretty entertained. Also, I am a Gen Xer where we always tell the story of my sister and I would bother my mom, and my mom would say, your favorite show's on. And we'd be like, what show? And she's like, your favorite show? What show? And we'd start naming shows till something would come on. Oh, yeah, Mr. Rogers is on. Oh, Sesame Street's on. Oh, I don't even know. Like any of these, The Muppet Show. All of these things were on. And she'd be like, yeah, that show's on. Until we would literally find it on the TV and leave her alone. So as a kid, that was what I did. As an adult, I am perfectly fine chilling by myself. I actually like it. Nobody bothers me. But there is also the element of having people around you and friends that uplift you and family that uplifts you. So I get the difference. But my point being is, you're born alone and you die alone. Sounds a little bit morbid, but it is what it is. And if you're not okay with being alone with yourself, that's a big self-reflection that you have to look into and understand why. Because you should love yourself. You should be able to keep yourself occupied. You should rely on yourself to live life and move forward. So if that's the case, then we need to step back a little bit and really truly understand why you can't, or why there's an issue, or why there's a fear. But honestly, founders, at this point, I'm sure you will be the same way, where you're just like, fuck it, I'm good. I don't care. And that's a wonderful place to be too. Because yes, we all need people and we all need friends and we all need family, just, to make us happy. And that's what the world goes around. That's what makes the world go around is, great relationships. But that starts within you. And that's my point. And I went around a long circle to get to that point, but it's still early. Number 4, managing family relationships with those that cause emotional harm. So, sometimes family you have to love from a distance, and that's part of the lessons in life. And it's not always going to be perfect. It's not always going to be something that is ideal. What you see on Christmas cards and what is presented out there on social media not always is reality, and that's okay. Families are not perfect, and there's certain dynamics that are better to be at a distance. And the more that you understand and accept that, because with relationships, it takes two people. It can't just be one-sided. And sometimes you just have to forgive from a distance. Sometimes you have to love from a distance. And that's okay. It is what it is. And the more that you force it into something it's not, you're going to end up disappointing yourself again. Because if that other person is not willing to meet you halfway to rebuild a relationship or change the dynamics of the relationship, then it's not going to change. And it's a lesson. And you have to learn that lesson in the sense, and not in a negative way, but in the sense of going, okay, this relationship taught me this. It taught me how to survive this way or approach things in a different way. So when it does that, that's kind of the lesson at hand, and that's okay. So family's complicated. It's a very, very complicated thing because each of us have our own journey, especially from a female standpoint. And relationships with mothers and sisters and aunts, it's not always so surface. There's a lot of in-depth hurt. There's sometimes a lot of generational trauma. There's just a lot of just regular emotions that come into it that just don't make it solid. And, you can't force it. You can't strong arm something into being what you envision it to be, or what TV, movies, whatever, advertising has told you it's what it's supposed to look like. So just the more that you accept things for what they are, the more you'll be able to silence that noise. And that's a good thing. And also, if you have your own family, it's a great thing, because if you can manage it from your perspective, you can help manage it in others' perspectives too. And it kind of creates a chain reaction where you're able to really create a lot of peace and calmness within your family. So it's not a bad thing. Number 5, eliminating repetitive and negative habits. I mean, shit, I repeat myself all the fucking time. But when someone shows you who they are, believe them. When you see things that are done to you that aren't repairable, walk away. It's never going to get better. If you don't learn the lesson the first time, the lesson is going to come back over and over again with people that you surround yourself with. So if someone has done you dirty, has, done something that isn't, repairable. And repairable meaning, hey, you got in an argument over something stupid, or, I don't know. I mean, if you've got a friend and she sleeps with your boyfriend, it's not repairable. Or a friend sleeps with your husband, or, there's so many things that could be that. Or they, screw you over and take your job, or they try to put you in a position where you're compromised, in your workplace, or compromised in front of other people. Those are just people that just, they're not in it for your best interest. And when they show you who they are, believe them. And I know that you might feel loyal, and I know that you might feel sad, and there'll be a loss. You'll have to grieve, that process, but that's okay, because that was not all friendships are meant for your entire life. Some friendships are just meant from when you're younger, some when you were older, some are very short term, some are for a few years, some are for a few months, and some are for decades. It's not, it's not something that the second you become a friend to someone, it's a lifetime commitment. So understand that there are different meanings for those friendships, and understand that there's different types of friendships. So I have a girlfriend that explains friendship in a way that's kind of entertaining. So she says there's 3 types of friendships. There's the first type of friendship that you'll be out at a club, a party, a bar. You see them there, you wave, you talk, you grab a drink, you have fun, you do whatever. Then you get the second type of friendship that, you see them on occasion, and you just, sometimes you'll go to dinner. It's like someone to do something with that you enjoy spending time with. They're, but you don't really know a lot about them. They're nice, but there's nothing that you're not traveling with them. You're not doing anything that's super invested there. And then you have the third type of friendship, which is the very special type of friendship. It's the person that you bury the body with. It's the person that you call and say, hey, I got a problem. And they say, don't worry, I'll be there in 5 minutes. Say nothing. Those are the ones that you want. So number 1 and number 2, you want to keep you know who you are that tells me the story. It's one of those things where, the first 2 are just passing time. And that's why I say too, as you get older, when you're more comfortable with being by yourself, I think the biggest challenge for women is going to a restaurant by themselves. And I've done it. Although I've done it, and and the crazy part about it is that because I travel a lot for work, and sometimes I am alone, and sometimes I just don't want to eat in the room, and I'm hungry, and I want to do, I want to go have a decent meal. And it's always interesting because sometimes I'll be at a restaurant, and they'll say, how many, in your party? And I go, 1, and they look at me, and I'm like, you just judged me. You just judged me. I am paying money to go sit down in your restaurant and eat, and you just judged me to sit at a table for 1. Like, really? So that always ticks me off. And sometimes I'll just go to the bar, because sometimes the bar, it's fun because you can talk to people, or you talk to the bartender, or whatever the case is. But I've also been in restaurants or bars sometimes where I've been sitting there eating by myself, minding my own business, and someone will come up to me and they'll be like, a guy will come up to me and be like, so do you come here often? What are you doing? And usually my answer is, because if I'm traveling, I'm working. So I'll say, oh, I'm working. They think I'm a fucking hooker. I'm like, no. And I'm like, but then this thought always comes in my head. What's my street value? Because honestly, now that you've opened this conversation, I am that person that will be like, I'm going to ask questions now that I've always crossed my mind that I've never asked. And then I want to kind of understand what my value is. What's my street value? Because at this point, listen, we've all seen Pretty Woman. So I was like, okay. So I'll be like, so how much? 99% of the time, I'm insulted. So I'm going to stick to event planning. But the bottom line it was just like, it's pretty funny to me that people make this assumption that if a woman is by themselves eating, something happened, they're an escort or a hook, like, why am I not allowed to eat by myself? It's weird. That's crazy to me that I just can't go get a meal by my damn self. I'm sorry, society, you got to fix that shit. And the good part about it is, because when you're silencing the noise and doing all this stuff, you don't give a shit. And like I said, I make fun of it, or I will bust people's balls about it, because like, if you say something stupid to me and I don't get offended, but I'll say some stuff back to get you to think and realize you just said something really stupid, but in a way that's funny, and in a way that's not it might be offensive to them, but I don't care. You open the door. But it's just one of those things where I'm like, you know what? You're going to say some dumb shit to me. I'm going to say some dumb shit back to you, because it's going to teach you a lesson too. A, you're impeding into my boundaries. B, you're judging me. C, I'm a paying customer. I don't care if I come with one person or five. It doesn't matter. Like, sit me down at a seat. You know, I can understand if you don't want to sit me at a table for 10. Absolutely understand that. But, you know, I'll have a vodka soda and shut the fuck up. So, you know, I mean, that's the thing. So next time you go to a restaurant by yourself, think of that. And you know, hopefully I'll make you laugh. But number 6, developing an armor of protection by remaining genuine to your goals and self, which is kind of what we're talking about right now. It's you know, you have to be okay with yourself before you can eliminate the noise and silence it out. So understanding that people are going to still say shit, they're still going to judge you, they're still going to like make their comments. And if you don't own it and take it to, I should say, not take it to heart, it just makes you so much stronger. Because it's like, you know what, it doesn't mean anything. Like someone, you know, they do you dirty and they're like, well, I mean, this happened to me. You know, a girl did me dirty and started all these fights, and she's like, well, you've lost my friendship. I'm like, I'm good. Thank you. You saved me a headache. Absolutely. Well, you no longer have my friendship. I'm like, you talk shit behind my back. She actually tried to assault me, which I started laughing. I'm like, at 40-something, I'm like, you should be embarrassed for yourself. And you know, it's like, and then, you know, talks all this shit, like everything. And, well, you lost my friendship. Okay. Thank you. I appreciate it, because even though you were a short-term friend for, you know, a couple months, you've now showed me who you are as a person and who your true colors are, and I appreciate that. And I actually thank you for that, because it saves me future embarrassment, future situations that could compromise myself as a person, my physical self, because she's, you know, I mean, she's almost 50, well, she's 50 years old now, you know, swinging around her arms like she's in a brawl, like she's gonna, you know, Rocky. I mean, and then, you know, the fact that, you know, my business, I mean, it's like, it's my business reputation. I mean, I work in the hospitality world. I mean, you cause a fight in a restaurant, I mean, that's my reputation too. And I was good. I was like, hey, thanks. Thank you for making my life really easy, and me not having to do it for you. So, you know, when you think of that in that aspect, we're good to go. And it's when, like I said, when people show you who they are, believe them. But let's dive into a topic that I think this might even have multiple episodes, because I just feel like with this whole finding her journey that I've been on, it's something that has come up so much. And it always piques everybody's interest. And I like to call it no expectations, which is surrounded by dating. And as you know, like I've said, I'm a pro in relationships, because like when you talk about volume, I've had a shit ton. So I can talk about any type of relationship you want. And you might be laughing and saying, no, that means you can't hold a relationship. But listen, glass half empty, glass half full. You figure it out. Whatever you want to believe, go for it. But before I start, you know that there's a quote coming, because, why would we not have one? So let me, I don't know why that cracks me up so much, but anyway, focus, Christy, focus, really focus here. All right, I quote, "There is no set of conditions that lead to lasting happiness. Lasting happiness doesn't come from a condition, but from learning to flow with conditions." So when someone says they love you unconditionally, they don't fucking love you unconditionally. Like, I hate to say it. I just hate to say it. Everybody has conditions. Everybody has judgments. Everybody has compromise. And the older we get, there's just, you're gonna have, like, yes, there is, I do believe that there is the perfect person for you. But that perfect person isn't perfect. So understanding that what you thought it would look like might not necessarily be what it is even though it is the right person. So, things happen. I mean, like, and the older you get too, I mean, people have children from past relationships, and people have traumas from past relationships. And sometimes, they'll say that they've done the work and done the therapy and gone through everything. And unfortunately, they weren't listening in therapy, or have a therapist that kind of coddles them versus making them really, truly do the work on both the male and the female side. So it's not, I'm not just, and this is not, and I want to be very clear about this is not going to be, I mean, we date all kinds out there, women, men, partners, whatever you want to call it. For me personally, I'm going to do it from my perspective, which I date men, all kinds. I say, so it's one of those things that when I explain from my perspective and my experiences, it's been with men. And then when I talk to friends and they're in relationships with females and just non-binary, ironically, it tends to be the same bullshit no matter who it is. So, we can take it generally, but, from my perspective, this is what it is. So, as you choose to have no expectations, it's hard to do, because after you get out of a relationship and you begin to date again, you've gone through these phases in your life now, especially through this whole finding her evolution, where you've been working on yourself. And what I always try to advise is that when you are working on yourself, the last thing you need to be doing is dating, because dating will fuck with you. It is, and dating apps tend to be more of a numbers game. And it's this whole thing where it's not organic. And I am a believer that if you're meant to meet someone, you are going to meet them, whether you meet them in the supermarket, you meet them on the street, you meet them on a dating app, whatever the case is. However you're meant to cross paths with someone, we don't always know how it happens. So keeping an open mind on that aspect of it. But when you're working on yourself, dating is more of that, you don't want to go into it, especially when you're dealing with traumas or dealing with, changing your environment and really focusing on you. I think that your key focus should just be on yourself and how you're growing and allowing that to build Because as I've talked about before, you've got, the whole tree analogy where when you are that tree trunk and you are building that strong base with the roots that are going to keep everything, just weathering the storms and weathering just the winds and things that can happen, and building on yourself where those branches are being built and they're strong and those leaves are coming and they're green and they're holding on tight, and then the flowers bloom. When you finally get to that point and you feel good and you have silenced the noise and you're like, I know who the fuck I am, that's when you should be ready to start dating. But you go into dating having no expectations, because that is the first key to survival. And I will tell you why. The more you strong arm shit, the more you're going to be disappointed. And you have to look at this as an opportunity. So any person that you meet, and I've done the apps, I've done all of the apps, I've done the Tinder apps, I've done the Hinge apps, I've done the Bumble apps, I've done every single one, because I know that, I've learned that even though they kind of have their own segments of what it is or what's supported, like, Bumble is more of that female aspect of supporting and having us make the first move. What I've learned, at least in the Dallas area, is that most men are on every single app that's there. So as much as you're trying to find an individual that might look at something differently based on what you think your goals are, and you believe that those are their goals also, they're on all three, so it doesn't matter. So they're going to look for, like, that opportunity for them is going to be the same, and it's a numbers game. So with that, it's kind of, you have to do the work of kind of seeing how much you're willing to put up with, and also asking the right questions to, vet these individuals that you're connecting with. But as you vet those individuals, understand that even though you are vetting them online, you might not even get to the point of a date. And I'm not saying it's you, because I've had conversations with men and I think they're cool and this is what it is and it's great. And then we even switch to text messaging or calling or whatever the case is, and then they never ask me out. Or something changes, or they're busy, or they just fall off the face of the earth, and, I just say they die. I don't know. They left. They died. I don't know. I gave them a funeral and they're long gone. And then sometimes they'll show up again like 6 months later, and I'm like, who is this? I don't know, and I don't care, because it's indicative of what they are. And if they show you, once again, if they show you who they are, and they show that they haven't respected you from the beginning, because yes, respect is earned, but common respect is something that isn't necessarily earned. It's more conversational business transaction, in the sense where someone says hello to you, you say hello back. How are you? I'm fine. How are you? There's that kind of basic civility, I guess is the word, civility, respect, where if they say they're going to call, or they say that they're going to do something, they should do it within reason. Like, hey, thanks for calling me. I'm going to call you back later. If they don't call you back later, they've shown you who they are, and it is what it is. And at that point, you cut your losses very quickly. You don't give them a second chance, and you move on. But if you do get to the point of going on a date, walking into that date, you need to make sure that you have no expectations. Now, I'm going to backtrack myself a little bit, because with that date, I am a believer, and this took me a long time to learn, that because of what I do for a living, I am good at planning. I am good at making reservations. A lot of times I have a lot of contacts for stuff that it's very easy. What I have learned, especially with men, in my experience, is that if we get to the point of going on a date, I have them make the date, and it has to be a date. Now, this is not a gold digger comment. This is not a money comment, because a date can be anything. It's a plan. So, if they come back to me and be like, oh, you're a gold digger, I just want to take you to coffee. Well, I'm not getting ready to go to coffee, and I'm not doing that, because you're not investing enough time in me. And that means I am not going to invest enough time in you. And if you already are like 1 foot in, 1 foot out at that moment, I'm not going to waste your time. I'm not going to waste my time. Planning a date, and some look at it as dinner, some look at it as lunch, some look at it as, I mean, listen, you could go and play mini golf and do something after. You could go bowling. I mean, it doesn't have to be this extravagant, costly experience, but what it does have to be is a plan. And with that plan, you are going to see how much they give a shit about you and it. So if you meet someone that says, oh, what kind of food do you like? I love chicken parm. Anybody who knows me, that is my thing. And that is also my thing that in certain areas in this country, there's not good chicken parm. So when I do I go home, all I eat is chicken parm. I'll eat it every day if I could, 3 meals a day. But the thing is, I like Italian food. So I digress. With that, they'll say, oh, you like Italian food? Okay, great. I'm going to make a reservation at insert restaurant here at 7:00. We'll see you then. And some will even offer to pick you up. And, you got to really judge with your own safety and how well you know someone or if you don't. And sometimes it's better to just drive there. But the fact that, someone is saying, hey, what do you like? This is what you like. This is what I'm going to do, and makes a plan. That's already a good first impression and a good first step because they value your time. They value what you like. They value what would make you, happy or compromising with what could potentially be something that you guys would have in common. So that is always the first step. And if they're unwilling to do that, then just say thank you, but no thank you. I, invest a lot of time and my time is valuable and I don't go on dates a lot. You could even use this word, these words that I don't go out often. I don't go out for, the sake of going out. I go out because I am, initially invested in getting to know you better. And it is what it is. That's what it is. I mean, it's like when you take a client out for business and you go to dinner. You're not going to take a client out that, you just met 2 seconds ago and you're like, this is what we're going to do. You're investing in that relationship and you're investing in getting to know that person better. And if they are unwilling to do that from the beginning and don't turn around, I've had women come up to me and say, well, I don't have time for that. I just want to do a drink. I don't want to waste my time. Well, then you're 1 foot in, 1 foot out too. So don't waste their time, don't waste your own time, and don't go because it is what it is. And also too, like I also feel like, I'll use the excuse too of, especially down here in Texas, people get dressed up. I mean, I love going out in New York and LA because I literally will throw on my leggings, flip-flops, and a baseball hat, and I'm good. And that's what I love about the East and West Coast, that it's so casual, where here people do really get dressed up, and it's regional and it's cultural. Same thing with Miami, especially at night. If I'm going to do my hair, my makeup, get dressed, look good, put everything, it takes time. And I'm not going to go get ready for someone to say, oh, here's a cup of coffee and I'm going to leave. So that's why you have to vet them as much as they are vetting you, but also set a standard of what you're willing to put up with and be okay if they fall off and say no. Because if they don't, then, and they do fall off, then it saved you 3 to 6 months, 9 months, whatever the case is, whatever disappointment. So, I mean, I've had that too, where I've had people come on, strong when they're traveling, and then they come back and they're like, hey, I'm like, hey, you've been back for a week and where are you? I thought we were going to go out. And then they fall off basically. They come up with some bullshit excuse. And then when they try to kind of backtrack that, I'm like, no, I'm good. You showed me who you are. I absolutely believe you. And thank you. Thank you for saving my time, because I thought you were cool for a minute, but it started off one way. And even when I do vet them and I kind of talk through and ask the right questions and whatever the case is, it's, I'm sometimes wrong. And I also don't believe in doing drinks because I've done that before. And the more you drink, the more it's just, you make the wrong decisions. And I've done that where I've gone out on a date, and it's kind of funny because he actually had me start paying for it too. And as a woman, like whoever asks you out on that date should be the one that pays, at least the first date. And that was hard for me too, being in New York and being someone from the East Coast where I'm like, I have my own money, I'll pay for it. And now I've learned that you sit back and you let the man be the man, or you let the woman be the woman. Whoever is asking you out is the one that should be taking care of that. And that's what I do with my clients. When I ask my clients out for dinner in a business, I'm not going to be like, hey, you can pay. I ask them out to eat. You know, I'm treating them. And it should be that way, and you should be okay with that. And if they make you feel otherwise, then they're automatically friend zoned, because I've had that happen to me too, where I've gone to dinner and I made that mistake once here. And I said, do you want me to pay house? He said, absolutely. And then he tried to drive me home and come upstairs. I'm like, and I gave him a handshake. I said, we're friends. We went Dutch. We're good. Thanks for your time. And it was great meeting you, and keep it moving, bro. That's it. And that's the same thing too with the drinking. I did that once where I made the mistake, and the next thing you know it, he was asking me to pick up rounds. So I did it, but I did it because I was drinking, but I did it. And I actually said to him, I asked him how much he made a year. Because now I was like, you know what? This is insulting. So I'm going to insult you back, James, because I'm in a mood to do that. And he told me what he made. I was like, oh, so you can afford the drinks. You're just cheap. I fucking said that shit. I didn't care. And, you know, things led to whatever. And then, you know, after that date, he was nice, but he was also, had his issues. I say that, and I'll get into that later. But it was one of those things that after that date, it didn't end badly. It was fine. It was what it was. And I had fun, but I also saw that I didn't have the respect that I deserved. And I was mad at myself for letting it go as far as it went. And it's kind of ironic because after that day, I never heard from him again, nor did I reach out. And then a couple months later, I was on an app, and I was his top hit to like connect with. And it was so funny how he asked me out again, a second time. And I was like, no, I'm not, let's try this again. What do you mean? Like, I haven't heard from you in months. Like, you made me pay for stuff. Like, you didn't act like a gentleman in that aspect of it, and you're cheap. And there's a difference between being frugal and being responsible and being cheap. There's differences. And then when you did that, and then you're like, I haven't heard from you. Like, I didn't even hear, hey, thanks for a good night. It was just fun. Whatever the case was, like, you just fucking left. Cool. And now you want to go out again? Bye. But so many women will be like, oh, maybe he's changed. Maybe he's different. Maybe he's this. No, he's not. He's not. He's showing you who he is. Believe him. And that's it. You know, and that's okay. Because this is a learning process. But anyway, I digress. Number one, the thing is with dating, when you get to that point of going out and they've chosen a date, they're going to treat you. You've made a plan. You need to go into that date with no expectations. Meaning, as much as you want this to be a love connection and you want this to be the guy that you're going to marry and this is who it's going to be, or there's a long-term relationship, whatever you envision what it is, do not do that. You need to look at this as this date, this interaction could be a lover for one night. This could be a relationship. This could be a business contact, or this could be a really good friend. And sometimes the fourth, too, it could be someone you never see again. But if you look at it where there's multiple opportunities with this individual because you were meant to meet this individual at this point in time, it's going to be so much different of an experience. So where you're walking into that thinking that this could be your next husband, you're going to put pressure on him. You're going to put pressure on yourself. You're going to put pressure on the situation, not looking right, perfect, what to say, what to do, where to go. If you just roll into that, just being yourself and saying, you know what, wherever this goes, it goes. If it goes to a second date, if it doesn't, if it becomes a one-night stand, it does. Knowing that there is no set plan, you're going to enjoy it so much more. You're going to feel free. You're actually going to be your authentic self because you don't give a fuck. Because it's going to be what it's going to be. And that is so critical. Because the more you strong arm a relationship into something that it's not, the more you're going to be disappointed. And that's part of it. And that kind of leads into learning how to date without pressure or preconceived notions, which it's easier said than done. But the more that you go into it and say, hey, I enjoy talking to this person, I'm attracted to them. And it could, and it could be physical, it could be emotional, it could be, from any other aspect that you're attracted to. This person's nice to me. They've been kind. They've created a plan. We're going to meet up. We're going to do this, whatever the case is. Going into that situation without creating pressure for them, for you, for whatever the case is, it's a game changer. And I know it's easier said than done, but you also need to understand your perspective because I hope at this point, founders, you're starting to heal. When you have those preconceived notions, basically what you're doing is taking all the hurt and the fucked up shit from all the other relationships and bringing that into this moment. And you cannot do that. And let me tell you, I've had that done to me. The year of 2023 has been, I call it the year of broken. Because I have dated some great men that are good men, that are successful businessmen, attractive men, kind. They're not cheaters. They're not deceptive. They're just fucking broken. And the problem is they haven't done the inner work to be a good partner again. So what I'm saying, and I'm not bashing, but what I am saying is that if you don't do the inner work with yourself and date and find people, which you'll do through your vetting, is find people that have also done the inner work. Because I have now dated a few that have been in therapy for a year, have been on their own for, years plus. And there is no timeline to it because I will tell you, when I got divorced, I had long left that relationship years before I physically got divorced. So there's not a timeline of, oh, you get divorced and you have to spend a year by yourself or, you're going to go have your eat, love, pray moment, whatever the hell it is. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is there is no time frame in doing that inner work, but you could meet someone that you think has been doing the inner work, that they think they have done the inner work, and it's not there yet. And it's disappointing, but it is what it is. And you have to look at it in a way that you can't be disappointed. I mean, the last one that I dated, it's 2 months of doing everything right. Absolutely did everything right. Communicative. Did I say that word wrong? Communicative. There we go. These big words, man. Fucking big words. Kind. Protective. Just was responsive, was responsible, set plans, there was an attraction, all of this good stuff until one day it just stopped. And there was no argument, there was no fight, there was nothing, there was no pressure. On him, there was pressure from his children. But for me, there was no pressure as much. And what was happening was that even though he was divorced and even though there was a divide with that relationship, his ex still had a hold on him, which was quite interesting. And that's part of doing the work with therapy and learning how to be an individual again and learning how to be by yourself and understand that life that was prior to that divorce is no longer what is your present life, because your present life is far better because you were in relationships that you were unhappy. there's infidelity, there's all these problems that were happening in those relationships that it was safe and it was comfortable, but it was bad and it was toxic. And this is what your new life looks like. But sometimes that old life will still have that grip. And unfortunately, he had not gotten to the point of silencing that noise and setting those boundaries where I have been. And for me, everything seemed right. And it doesn't make him a bad person. It does not make him a bad individual. It just makes him someone who is not ready. And when you're not ready, it's frustrating because a lot of times when you first meet someone, they will say they're ready. And they're showing you who they think you should see. Like, they're not showing you their authentic selves. And you have to do the same because you can't have that new person, basically pay for all the hurt that you had. And you have to go into it in a way that you are it's a clean fucking slate. It has to be. Otherwise, you're part of the problem. You're not part of the solution. And unfortunately, it's just with people and with dating, I call it the 3-month rule. And that's not a sex rule. This is the 3-month rule because if you have not done the work and have found yourself and really truly understand who you are, most individuals have not. So that first 3 months of dating, you are dating what they want you to see, what they think you want to see. You might be giving off who you think they want to see. And it's not real. It's fun. It's exciting. But also too, if it's very hot in the beginning, it'll tend to cool off very fast. So you want to look for something that has a slow burn. Because with that slow burn, you're going to learn that you're going to start seeing things in those first 3 months that maybe not. But things are so great and you're so like in it that you're not really looking at it clearly. Because that's when you have to wait till that like 3 to 6 months. And then all of a sudden in those 3 to 6 months, you might see something that's like, ooh, that's off brand. Ooh, he's never done that before. She's never done that. Oh, it used to be like this. And now all of a sudden it's like that. And what happens? So those are called red flags. We love those flags because they show you who people are. And when they show you who they are, fucking believe them. But unfortunately, what happens a lot is those first 3 months, shit was so good that those next 3 months, when something goes weird or off or wrong, you're like, you know what? It's been this. That's just a one-off. Oh, that was just a simple thing. Oh, you know what? They just had a bad day. That's a real person. That's the real person. This is the bullshit. That's the real person. So then you start seeing that, but because you're a nurturer, you're someone that's, not fully evolved yourself where you know that it's like, hey, I'm okay with being by myself. I am okay with looking at something and going, you know what? It's okay to walk away. You're connected and you're kind of getting codependent, and that's a problem because now you're into the 6 to 9 month mark where you're in a committed relationship, whether or not you call it that. But then you've seen the red flags start appearing more, but now you're fucking stuck. Because you're like, now I've been with this. Do I really want to start over? Is it easier to put up with the bullshit than start over? It's better to start over because what it is you're going to learn that lesson, and that lesson is going to teach you not to do that the next time. But the majority of people will stick it out because they feel like they're 3/4 through to the finish line. Not realizing that finish line is a big fat goose egg of a loss in the end, but they think it's one because society likes to tell us that we are only, worthwhile if we're committed or we're married or we have a partner or whatever the case is. Is what makes you valuable. You make yourself valuable. That's it. As an individual, party of one. It's you, not what the other person can do as a team. They don't make you more valuable. You become a team and it's a great interaction with each other, but your worth is your worth. It doesn't get better because someone can make you better. And that's the thing. So when you hit that 9 to 12 months and shit's going left, like that's the danger zone, because you've seen the red flags, you've seen the problems, you know what's going on, and then you get stuck because now you're living with the person, or now you're doing this, or now you're getting married, or whatever the case is. But that's a problem, because it's harder to get out of it because you're starting to merge your life. So my biggest, advice in any of this is just to see who they are. When you see the red flags, just, and there's a difference too. There's a difference between a mistake and a red flag. Like, and that comes with communication. So if you're communicating and you've communicated that you want to be in a exclusive relationship, and next thing you know, he's dating all these other people, then that's a fucking red flag, because you had a conversation about it. Like, I had one, we'll call him James. James decided, he was dating me and decided, he said, I want to be in a committed relationship with you. I don't want you dating anybody else. So with conversations like this, in my experience here in this area, I knew it wasn't going to last, but I like great stories. And I would, I want these stories for you. I was like, sure, let's do it. And he said, I don't want you to be on the apps. I just want to be with you, and I want to try to make this work. So I said, absolutely, no problem. Let's do it. Sign me up. Now, I'm also an individual, too, that I've been extremely busy. I am a woman that tends to not call a lot. I call you back. I will text you back, but I'm not someone that reaches out. I'm like, what are you doing? I'm so lonely. I miss you. Like, that's just not who I am. Good, bad, and different. And whoever I end up with will know that, and they're good with that. They're cool with that. But so he asked me to do that. So I was like, whatever. I was going to get off the apps anyway. So I got off the app because, sometimes you just need a break from that shit too. And 2 days later, I had done nothing different than I had done the last couple of months, other than just, taking my profile down. James says to me, this is too much pressure. I can't handle this. I can't do this. I'm sorry. I'm done. I was like, okay, cool. Fucking crazy shit. So I'm just like, okay, great. Never heard from him again. 2 weeks later, 3 weeks later, whatever it is, he texted me, hey, what's up? Like, nothing happened. And I was like, what do you want? What do you want? Like, what now? What do you want? He's like, what do you mean? I've been busy. I'm thinking about you. And then I was like, all right, good. I'm glad you're thinking about me. And he's like, did you unfriend me on Hinge, or unconnect me on Hinge? And I said, I did that like a month ago when you asked me to be in a committed relationship, which means he never even stopped dating. Even though he asked me to do that, he never got rid of his options. And I said, well, that's good to know, because, you asked me to get off Hinge, but you stayed on Hinge. That's great. Speaks volumes. That's cool. Like I'm like, once again, if someone shows you who they are, believe them. And then his response to me was, oh, I don't remember asking you that. I sent him the screenshot of the text message. I said, well, here it is. And in those exact words. And he's like, oh, okay, cool. My point being, when they show you who they are, believe them. And for me, it was more of a case study. It was more of a scientific type of experiment. And it was, and I'm entertained by it because I wasn't physically invested in it. And I was okay with the outcome being the way it was. I was actually preferring it because of just, the flakiness and the back and forth. But, some women would be so wrapped up into that where, oh, he wasn't ready. He needed time. He needed this. No, he's fucking looking at his options to see what his best options are. And he's leveraging it. You never want to be an option. And when you're dating, you're dating. And I always say this too. You need to make decisions by yourself and not be influenced by society, by their norms, by other people's judgments, whatever the case is. And when you're dating, you need to date. And when I say date 5. Date a fucking basketball team. And I'll tell you that too. This is why. Because if you are dating at least 5 men or women, you will not hyper-focus on any of them. And that is a wonderful position to be in. Because when you do that, if you date one, you're going to put all your eggs in a basket. You're going to focus completely on that guy and you're going to suffocate him, or that woman. You're going to suffocate them. If you date 5, you're too busy to focus on anything, and you do that. And I truly believe that the right one, that could not be, the wrong ones are gonna fall off, and the right ones are gonna fall into place. And the best part about it is most people are very competitive, depending on the type of individual you date. But men that I have dated, they're pretty competitive, especially from a business standpoint. So I don't even have to say anything. They sense that somebody else is around. And when they sense that somebody else is around, you're going to see if they're either going to step up or they're going to go to a comfort zone where they're going to look for somebody else that's easier, that doesn't make them work so hard. And you want somebody to work for you. So when you date multiple ones, just be safe about it. Always be safe about it, because you have to protect yourself. But it's also something that, it could be a bit of a full-time job, but if you're really actively looking for relationships and partnerships and things like that too, you definitely have to do it in a way that you are not strong-arming it and you're not forcing it and you're not turning around saying, you know what, this is the person I met and this is what it's going to be. It's a numbers game. In the beginning, it is a numbers game, which is kind of contradictory to what I've said before as far as relationships and silencing the noise. But unfortunately with apps, it's in dating now. There's so much in social media. There's so much of that constant, next, what's next, that you have to change the way that you maneuver through it, keeping with the same mindset that it's quality over quantity. So when you pick those 5, pick the fucking best 5. Don't just pick, John, James, and Jimmy, and whoever the case is off the street. Pick the best 5, but pick them in a way that is, you never know. Like, they could all be really great. They could all fall off. I mean, I joked with a friend of mine the other day, and I was like, yeah, I had 4 in rotation. The next week I had none. They all fell off, which, to me was funny, because it was just, it's not meant to be. And I'm good with that. And I honestly thank God, the universe, whatever you believe in, you thank that belief and say, you know what? Thank you for saving me the time. Thank you for this interaction, because honestly, too, I have gone on dates, especially in LA. I've gone on dates with a few men that weren't good connections as far as like romantically, but have become really great friends. I have a relationship too that is in New York that, we dated and we weren't good dating. We are the best of friends now. And I wouldn't know what I would do in my life if I didn't have him in my life. Like, I wouldn't know what I would do. He is one of my closest friends. I care about him deeply. I love him to death. And it started as a date. And that dating just didn't work. And years later, we reconnected. And part of it was because I wasn't ready, and I apologized. And I actually called him and I said, hey, I wasn't the nicest to you. And I wasn't ready, and I am sorry. I'm really sorry, because you are a really good guy, and it's got to be. It's well over a decade and a half. I mean, we're good friends where we genuinely care about each other, and that's something that's so fucking special that you don't get often, and that's that quality. So my point being that when you vet these individuals, you don't have an expectation, or that relationship or meaning relationship of a friendship or of a lover or of a actual relationship may morph into something else as time goes by. That's so much more powerful than what you thought it would be. And it's so much stronger. So understanding that you just don't have an expectation for what it is. You surround yourself by good people, good things come out of it. But it's doing the work. As you are doing the work on your own self, you need to do the work on finding people that are going to also be equally as evolved as you are at this point. And that's, that's the it's like, and society will come back and they'll say, Okay, you don't have somebody in your life. Well, you're not worthy of that. Or you don't have kids. What's wrong with you? Or why did you get divorced? You're supposed to stay married forever. Like, all that shit is bullshit. Like, you have to do what's right for you, and you have to be happy. And, relationships look different. I mean, there's couples that stay together for years that never get married. There's couples that stayed together, got married for a year, and got divorced, and then became really great friends after. So you can't pigeonhole what society tells you. You have to do what's right for you and that other person, but in a way that you're not strong-arming a situation because that's what you think it is, and versus allowing it to organically grow into what it's supposed to be. So, you want to make sure that you just date. And when you do date, you date that person for who they are and not what they present themselves to be. I mean, I have girlfriends that want to only date lawyers or doctors or, any type of individual that has a job that, is by society norm successful, that has, some financial backing to it. My first question to her was, well, how's that going for you? Because she's, it's one right after the next that disappoints her. And I'm like, you're not dating you're not looking at who that person is. You're looking at what they do and what they look like and what's surrounding them. So the second that you change that thought process in knowing, who they are, and it's not stereotyping. I mean, there could be, yes, there's some fields that have that same type of stereotype of an individual, but in the grand scheme of things, it's not. You have to vet the person for who they are. And when you look at that way, you're going to have a different perspective on it. Because otherwise, if you just keep doing what all these, kind of surface vetting, it's not, how do they treat you? How do they talk to you? Are you chasing them? Are they chasing you? And not chasing in a way that they're chasing, but like if you go on a date and you had a really good time and you felt like there was a connection, they should ask you on a second date. You shouldn't be hinting to them to ask you on a second date. You need to be on the same page. So, as much as I am very alpha and things like that, it's learning how to sit back in your feminine where you let the cards, like you basically want to take all the cards in the deck, you want to throw them up in the air and then just see where they fall, which is really hard to do because I am the same where I like to control things. I like to, just make it easy. I like to maneuver through things because it's easier for me. And I say it's easier, but it's not necessarily easier. It's my comfort. And it's also my fear of, I'd rather reject them before they reject me. And sometimes you have to look at it in a way that's like, you know what? I'm going to just let it sit and let it play out to exactly the way it's supposed to play out. And let you be who you are. I'm going to be who I am. Because this person might wait 3 weeks to respond again. I'm not okay with that. So I might not respond at all. And that's okay. Or I might say, okay, you know what? Maybe they've been busy and maybe they've been gone for 3 weeks of, like things happen with life too. And especially if you date someone that is heavily into their career, that is part of that relationship. I mean, for me, for instance, I travel a lot for work. So if I am dating someone, they have to understand that I might be here and then I'm gone for 2 weeks, or I might be here, but the flip side of it is if they're in a position where they can travel too, you can travel with me. I mean, I'll be working certain days, but I can also pad in some fun time. And obviously what I do a lot is surrounded by events and social encounters and things like that. So there are different opportunities that make it a win-win situation where it's not just on for 2 weeks, off 2 weeks, or just typing to, just working with each other's schedules. So, it's just understanding that the most important thing, though, you do need to do is love yourself enough to accept nothing less than what you deserve. Now, what you deserve is the fucking best. And you don't compromise on that. Relationships are about compromise, but what you deserve, you don't compromise on. But you also have to make sure that you are giving what you want to receive. There's a balance. So I know that sounds really confusing right now, but there's key things that you want in your life, in all relationships. For me, in my business relationships, in my friendships, in my regular, like lover relationships, there's things that I demand that are deal breakers if they're not. Is transparency, loyalty, honesty, and authenticity. When they're not there, it's just hard for me to interact with that. And those are just deal breakers for me. I don't tolerate cheating. I don't tolerate bullshit. I don't tolerate lies because, I'm also someone who reads people very well. So even if they haven't admitted to lying, I already know it's coming. Like I could see it. So, I used to sit back and say, hey, you know what? This is a work in progress. Or I would look at past generations and be like, you know what? Relationships were different where they built on it. And, it's about the good and the bad and things that go sideways and things that are going in a straight line and left and right. And all these things can happen. But I look at examples of my parents who have been married for 55 years. And to say everything is perfect in 55 years it would be the biggest lie that existed. I mean, relationships have peaks and valleys, but they've been able to sustain it since they were 20 years old. Where for me, in this day and age, there's a different sense of commitment. And even with jobs, I mean, in their generation, people stayed in their careers or their jobs for 20, 30 years. I mean, now it's so different. I mean, if you get someone for a year, that's a big deal. And people look at relationships like that too. Same thing with divorce. There was a different tolerance for staying together, where there was a difference of balance where sometimes women wouldn't leave, whether they were afraid for society or they couldn't afford to leave. And these are all things that in this day and age, and kind of what Finding Her is about, is that it puts yourself in a position that you can make whatever move that you want at any point in time because you've done the work. You've protected yourself as far as emotionally, physically, financially, where you can bring a lot to the table. You know what you deserve. You know what you're willing to not settle with, and be okay to walk away because you can do that. You've got options, and having options is a great fucking place to be in. And, with that, I kind of, you have to understand that with every relationship, there will be peaks and valleys, and you will have to compromise on certain things. Like, for instance, I've got girlfriends that say, hey, I'm at an age, I don't want to date a man with kids. Well, you're at a certain age that the vast majority of men are going to have children. So are you willing to compromise on that? Are you not? Maybe you're willing to compromise on kids that are now adults versus kids that are really small kids. Or, you have to be realistic about what you're asking. And also asking that, if they ask that of you, could you provide that? If you're asking for someone who's well off or financially stable, are you financially stable? Are you able to give back what that is? And I'm not saying that you should take care of them, but I'm saying I never ask someone to do something or give something that I am unwilling or can do myself. And I think that's the biggest thing. And then when you're able to do that and then kind of look at the different factors that kind of come in as the secondaries, can you compromise on it? Can you build together? Can you work as a team? And it's a simple yes or no answer. It's not, oh, we can't now, but we eventually will be. No, you won't eventually be anything. It's either those values and what that person stands for is that from the beginning, or it's not. So, we talked about this too. You have to just make sure that spending time, getting that respect, and respect in a way that you shouldn't have to demand respect. Respect should be given. And if it's not It's not earned. Like, I don't know. It's just something that listen, I've had my last year, like I said, I am not perfect. I make shit tons of mistakes all the time. But like my last year, I had this theme where I had to sit here and explain my fucking self to everyone. I had to explain my expertise, explain why I'm valuable. And this is not even in dating. This is my business. Why I have, 2 designations behind my name that less than 950 people have globally. Why I speak at conferences. Why I do that. Why are you hiring me? Why should you pay me what I'm worth? It was a respect thing. And I had to sit here over and over and over again and re-explain myself to the point where I was like, no, I'm done. I'm not doing it anymore. I am not. Listen, either hire me or don't. I don't give a shit because I know I'm the best person for the job. I know I'm the best person in the relationship. I know that I've done the work, whether it's personally or professionally. I have done the work to not only do what I have sold you on what I can do, because even when you're dating, you're selling yourself. I mean, that's basically what you're doing. You're selling your brand, who you are, what you do. And it should be an authentic brand. It's an authentic person. And when I'm selling that and you are still trying to make me work for it, you don't fucking respect me. You're not listening to me. You don't give a shit. You just want to see how bad I want it. And that is a shitty position to be in, and don't ever get into that position. It still angers me. Like, I'm getting mad now because I know that those individuals will go to someone else that does the same thing as me and be like, fuck, she was really good. I have relationships that they come back and go, fuck, I fucked this up. And I'm like, yeah, you did. Thanks for acknowledging it. I appreciate the apology. We're cool. And you forgive and you forget. Because that's what we talked about, that forgiveness. You forgive and you forget. Doesn't mean you go back to them, because if they didn't appreciate you from the jump, they're never going to appreciate you either. So that's another thing too. And like I said, that relationship can change into a friendship. That relationship can change into different things, which is good. But when we're talking about dating and being in that relationship, if they didn't respect you the first get-go around, it's never going to happen. Doesn't mean they can't be in your life. Doesn't mean you can't work with them in a business standpoint. Doesn't mean you can't be a friend. Doesn't mean any of those things. It just means that that is not your person that is meant for you. And I truly believe everybody is meant to have someone. And I do believe, we talked about this the other day, the 3 loves in your lives. The first love is like the love that you have when you're, in high school or whatever. It's like your first love, the one that you're always going to remember. And it's always like a shitty love. Like, it's something that's like, it's high school drama and chaos and all this just, things just don't make sense, but they make sense to you at that moment. And that's always going to be your first love. And even when you look back at that, you're going to look back at it and just look at it always so fondly because it is what it is, because it's young and fresh. The second love is the love that you get into that teaches you the lesson that hurts you the most. And I consider that my marriage. I mean, I learned to, I thought it was the right thing to do at the time. And it was something that it wasn't. It taught me a lot about myself. It taught me how to love myself first. It taught me how to fight for me, which at the time I wasn't. I was pleasing everybody else. I was doing things to make my family happy, society happy, him happy, his family happy, and just trying to hold it all together while I was falling apart. And I learned a very valuable lesson with that I will never forget. And then the third love is apparently the love, I've yet to see it, but apparently it exists, that takes you by surprise, that you've never expected, that just sweeps you off your feet when you're least expecting it. Because you're at a point in your life where you've done the work, you've learned the lessons, you've gotten to the point where you're like, okay, this is that good karma that comes in that just makes you look at it and say, shit, this is what it was about. This is what I had been searching for how many years or however long. And the thing is, too, it happens differently for everyone. So, you'll see some people that they got married in high school and they are still madly in love 30, 40, 50 years later. And that's pretty fucking special. But that doesn't happen to everyone. And the vast majority, you're going to go through that. But also, it is important that as you are going through that, you might be in a relationship now that the love is gone. And if the love is gone, get out of it. If you're miserable and you're not happy and you're not fulfilled, get out of it. And everyone always says, oh, dating sucks and this is what's going on and it's always greener on the other side. If you are not appreciating a relationship that is a healthy relationship, yes, that is on you. But most of the time, if you are in a relationship that is just there's infidelity, there's anger, there's frustration, there's fighting, whatever the case is, get out of it, because I will guarantee you that the next one that you're in and you learn those lessons and you do the work on yourself, that next one that is that you end up getting in, that's a real relationship. Because I'm not saying that you get out of that relationship and the next person you date, boom, that's what it is. That's not what I'm saying. You're going to have to kiss a lot of frogs before you find that prince, but you're looking differently. You're using it differently. You're vetting differently. And when you do find that love that sweeps you off your feet organically and authentically, and you look at this person, you go, this person fucking gets me. And they get you without reservation. You're going to be like, why did I wait so long? But timing is always everything. And sometimes we do take these different paths, and sometimes it takes us longer to get there. Listen, I'm hard-headed. I know. It takes me a hot minute to do anything. So, but on the flip side, you got to look at that and say, hey, we all have our own path, and life is not over when you're 40. Life is not over when you're 50. Life's not over when you're 60. I mean, people live till they're 100 sometimes, and it's like, and they live healthy lives. And you're 60, you got another 40 years of long living, it's not a short amount of time. So are you going to live it in a way that's, just complacent and mediocre and relationships do, especially long-term relationships, they do go in peaks and valleys. We've talked about this. You have to say to yourself, is this a person that I can just live with, or it's someone that I can't live without? And if it's someone that you can't live without, then work on it, because that's the most important thing. And that's why you have to really analyze relationships and say, is this worth it? Am I fulfilled? Am I, now that I've found her, is this relationship serving me? So, understanding that connections, like these different connections, it could be passing, it could just be a lesson, it could be any type of scenario. And that's why you just have to take it for what it is. So, like I said, it's I have another relationship in my life there too, where we're going on 2 years of back and forth. And we've dated and we've become friends. I mean, we have an interesting relationship. And he's probably mad at this point that I haven't even talked about him yet. So it's one of those things where we're a lot alike, and there's respect. And there's boundaries with us too, because it's interesting, because as much as we date and do what we would do as people would look at it as a relationship, it's not it's more of a friendship than anything else, than like a committed relationship. It's not a commitment at all. But it doesn't mean that there's not respect, there's not love for that person, there's not I'm thoroughly entertained by that person. That person cares about me, I care about them. And things don't always look the way that they're supposed to. And is it fulfilling enough for me for the rest of my life? Absolutely not. Do I value this person in my life? Absolutely. So understanding where you are at that point in time, and understanding that there really aren't rules to dating. There's not rules to it. There's not this like, we've dated 10 times and now we have to be in a relationship. We have to do this and what. I mean, you need to know what your goals are. But knowing what your goals are and putting that pressure on that other person is not a good idea. Like, knowing that you eventually do want to be in a relationship is great. But walking into a first date and putting that pressure on someone will just get you nowhere. I mean, it's just all it's going to do is get the other person to run, because you have to just not be so hard set on what you think something looks like. let it build. Because when it builds and it's meant to happen and this person is meant to be in your life, how it builds and what it builds into is so much more special and far greater than what you would have just envisioned it or strong-armed it to be. And I'm also too, I like to see what people do. And that's something that's kind of cool too. Like, even when you're dating and you're reaching out on an app, I saw this on a TikTok, and someone asked this girl, how do you connect with someone? She said that I just write their name. So we'll say James with a period and see what they do. And it's actually a great idea because you'll see if they respond, how they respond, if they don't respond at all. And there's not that much effort put in there. There's the energies put out there that I'm interested, but I'm also going to see what you do first. And it's pretty powerful. It's something so simple, but yet so powerful. And the other thing that I'm talking about too with no expectations is listening to your intuition. And, when these red flags, like I just say, like when you see them, just believe them. With business, with family, with friends, with relationships, with dating, like you have to see it for what it is, because if you don't, you're just ending up ultimately wasting your time. And as I like to talk about, time is so precious. It is not guaranteed, and it's fucking special. And it's something that we can never get back. So are you going to have, this precious time that you, like, it's limited. So are you going to take this a limited amount of time in life to force a round peg into a square hole? Don't get sexual on me. Or are you going to allow things to flourish organically, continue to date? And dating means date. Get out there and date. Meet people. Keep going. Don't just focus on one thing, or this person didn't respond to me. Now I'm not going to do this anymore, and shut yourself off. Be open to that. Be open to rejection, because it's redirection. Be open to talking to that person and be like, you know what? They look great on paper. I talked to them. The vibe wasn't there. Thank you, but we're going to move on. It's, be open to all of those different aspects and be okay with saying no. Like I've had that too, where someone's asked me on a date, and they've asked me on a date like next to where their house is, and I have to drive 45 minutes, and they want to have cocktails and do stuff. So I'm like, well, if they're not getting you a car or they're not doing something like, so you want me to go have dinner with you, drink, and then drive home? You're not worried about my best interest, right? And so I'll say thank you, but no thank you, because you're not protecting me. Because that's another thing that's important to me, is someone that will protect me, because I've been in relationships that I'm not protected, that I've always said, God forbid I got sick and had nothing, or couldn't work or couldn't do anything, everything would fall apart. And that's exactly what happened to me in my marriage. Everything, the second I stopped doing something and making sure that everything was held together, it all fell apart, and he just shrugged his shoulders and let it. And then I had to fix it again. And when I had to fix it that second time, that lesson was so completely learned that I was like, you know what? If I have to walk around with a weight on my ankle, I might as well walk around with that by myself. Because if I'm trying to swim and I'm barely making it, and you're not throwing me a life preserver, you're just throwing some more weights so I'm drowning, then I'll do it on my own. I'll paddle on my own, because I've got a better chance of survival. And emotionally, physically, mentally, it's just what you have to do. And be okay with saying no. And be okay with not every person is your person you're meant for, because it'll keep you sane. And it'll keep you protected in a way where you are still working on yourself and protecting yourself and growing and becoming stronger in your convictions and what you're willing to put up with and what you're not willing to put up with. And that's a pretty powerful place to be in. And, with that, it's also the last thing that we'll talk about. The point is trusting the process by being open to receiving and being comfortable with walking away. So, dating is more about checkers than it is chess. And you have to be open. I said that wrong. What a day. So let me backtrack. Part of dating is playing chess, not checkers. There we go. I tell you, listen, I'm really a blonde. Meaning it's strategies. It's protecting your end game in a way that you're not just leaving yourself out open. You're not just leaving yourself out into the cold. You're not leaving yourself out to being judged because you're feeling kind of kicked to the curb because you're on, a dating app and all the people that you connected with that you liked, say you liked 5 of them, and then they didn't get back to you or they unconnected with you or you felt like you can't do that. You got to look at it as this is what it is. Connect with who you want to connect with. If it's meant to be, it's meant to be. Let them do the work. Let them come in. I mean, obviously respond. Don't make them wait. Don't play games. And I hate games where it's, well, he didn't respond to me right now, for 3 hours. So now I'm not going to respond to him for 3 hours. And he didn't do this and he didn't do that. So I'm not going to do that. No. You need to do stuff in a normal way that you would do for anything else. So like for me, I usually respond right away because if I don't respond right away, I'll tend to forget. And that's kind of just how I deal with friends, business, whatever the case is. Don't do that, because if you start playing those games, it's already not the right person for you. But you also have to be strategic about how you're doing these things. Because if it's something that you do, like if it's someone that you feel like, okay, well, they were busy and this is what happened, or, oh, I totally forgot to respond and it kind of set this kind of, different conversation where it was working in one direction, now it's kind of going into another direction. Either you can pull it back or you can just let it go. But just being, strategic about how you date and understanding that at first it's going to be more of a volume type thing, understanding that you just date to date, get to know the person. It's about the long game. It's not about a 3-month, let's be in a relationship. It's not about finding someone to support you. It's not about finding someone to validate who you are, because you should be doing all of that stuff yourself. It's ultimately about finding someone that compliments you, that makes you better, that makes you feel whole, that makes you feel loved, that makes you feel inspired, that makes you feel happy. And 80% of the time, like, yes, we know it's not perfect, but 80% of the time, it's like, this is good. And I look forward to being with this person. And that's going to come with time. That's not going to come overnight. There's not going to be this passion, because when it is a passionate thing, like I said, it tends to fizzle out very quickly, because you might not necessarily be dealing, and you may, there's always exceptions to the rule, but you will most likely not be dealing with the person that's really that person. You're dealing with the person that they're trying to show you who they are. And with that, you want to look at it as a long game, and look at it in a way that you're not just throwing it all out there. Because also too, I've done that too, where I'm honest and open and I'm very transparent. Doesn't always work. And I used to be like, well, maybe I said too much. No, I was who I am. I was authentically who I am, and I was just too much for that person. Understand the difference? So that comes with self-confidence, and that comes with giving 0 fucks, which is actually our last lesson in finding her. So it's getting to that point where it's like, you don't like me, I'm okay with that. You don't have to like me. You have to respect me, but you don't have to like me. And that's the first time I said that in day 1. And that's where you get to that point. And with finding a relationship that is a healthy, solid relationship for you, these are all those things that come into play. And it's also dating in a way that you're able to not structure it where you're setting expectations, where you're forcing things into an area that they're not meant to be. And you just gotta have faith, and you gotta have faith in yourself. And you gotta have faith that you've been doing the work, and not saying that you're not gonna make mistakes, but you have to have that faith to say, okay, the right person's gonna come at the right time, and you'll see it. Because when things are meant for you, they don't pass you up. So always remember that and trust in the process. So that is dating with no expectations. And I know this topic's going to come around again, because it is. I've dated in New York, I've dated in LA, I've dated in Miami, I've dated here in Dallas. Dating is very different in different regions of the country. And it's crazy, because the number one, well, I don't think it's number one now. I think it's Philadelphia, the number one place for cheating for a while was Dallas, and the number 2 for cheating is Fort Worth, which is quite interesting to me because if that was a Jeopardy question, I would have went with a major city like, Miami, where there's a lot of partying and fun and things like that, where it's quite interesting that the cities that are mostly relationships where they've been long-term relationships or marriages and families and things like that, or cities that kind of focus a lot on being in the Bible Belt, that look at that, keeping together and staying in a relationship, good, bad, and different, is where there's the most infidelity. So I'm going to just let you think about that, and I'm not going to get into it further. We can get into it in another episode, but it's interesting to me to see that the cities that tend to not have longer commitments are the ones that have less infidelity than the ones that focus on remaining together. So, I don't know. Of course, founders, I've asked you, you have any questions on this subject? And one of them came in very quickly, and it's a little bit more related to Gen X because, when you're in your 20s and your 30s, it's about dating. And anyone who's ever asked me, I've been engaged twice in my 20s, and I am thankful I didn't get married because I would have been divorced twice in my 20s. And I always tell people or tell founders when they ask, should I get married? Well, I'm really in love. And I said, your 20s are meant to live. Your 30s are meant to live because you're still finding out who you are. And yes, I understand if you definitely want to have a family and things like that, there are, nature is nature. And I get that, there's certain timelines that we're supposed to abide by. But, there's so many different opportunities now that allow you to have families later in life, and the life expectancy is so much longer than it used to be in, 50, 60, 70, 100 years ago. So in your 20s, live, find out who you are, travel, be in a relationship, but be in a good relationship, be in something that, helps you grow. And it's a pretty powerful thing because what you learn a lot in your 20s is that you really learn who you are. And in your 30s, you start becoming who you are. So, there's a lot of trial and error. And when you are in relationships, then sometimes you're not authentically yourself. And not because you didn't want to be. It's just part of the growing process and part of the aging process and getting those life experiences. So, a lot of times in relationships and what I've seen is, the people that do get married when they're younger, they married somebody who was that person then who is a totally different person now. And then there's a lot of unhappiness, but there's such a codependency and a complacency that they're afraid to leave. And that's the biggest mistake you could ever make because your happiness is far valued over anything else in life. Because if you're not happy and you're not fulfilled and you're not feeling complete, then you can't do that for anyone else. And whether it's your children, whether it's a lover or if it's a husband or whatever, family, it's just, if you can't be one with yourself, then you're not doing anyone else justice. So just always forget that. Always remember that. But let's talk about, so as I'm talking about relationships in their 20s and their 30s, one of the questions that I did get is, it happened to be someone that got divorced at 45 that never thought that she would ever get divorced and had 2 kids. And her first question is, who's going to want me? Someone pretty fucking amazing is going to want you. And you're going to want them. And that's the most important thing, is that when you do the work on yourself and you learn from that relationship, because relationships, when they dissolve, it's not one person. It takes 2 people to dissolve a relationship, and it takes 2 people to break down a relationship. So when you really understand what you've done as far as your part in that, correct it so when you're moving forward, the next person that is someone that's in your life, that's going to be long-term in your life, they're not paying for all the heartache and the trauma that happened in that past relationship, that you are moving forward wholeheartedly. But moving forward with the faith and understanding that when you do that work on yourself, the next person that's meant to be yours is going to be meant for you, and they're going to be so incredible. And they're going to make you realize that you waited too long in the last one to move forward. Because a lot of times we wait out of fear. And a lot of times it's the society norms that put that pressure on us. And the second that we learn how to own ourselves, and sometimes I feel like the universe works in funny ways where you could be at a point where you're miserable and unhappy and the other person starts the process and triggers that and you're forced to get divorced even though you would have never been the one that did it. And sometimes it's the universe working away, like we gave you the opportunity to do it, you didn't do it, so now we're going to force you to do it. And that's okay. I mean, it's kind of that lesson that we talk about, where that lesson kind of revisits itself over and over and over again, where it gets harder and harder, where you're like, fuck, then you finally learn it. So sometimes life will give you a little kick in the ass when you didn't do it yourself. But 45, 55, 75, it is never too late to find love. It is never too late to find a partner in your life that really just inspires you, that makes you happy, that makes you a better person. But like I said, you're doing the work yourself. You're coming into it whole. And it could be at any age. And there is no timeline. I mean, death is a timeline, but we don't know when that's going to happen, and we don't know how that's going to happen. So you can't live that way. You have to live in a way that's just every day is a blessing. Every day is some new chapter that you can start. And it's never too late to start. It's never too late to build something great. So don't forget that, okay? Now, as I'm being all positive, we do have the Charlie-isms, which my favorite Charlie-ism, because, my family's a take no prisoners kind of, especially my father. And being that he paid for 2 weddings that I called off, and then the third wedding, he actually said he would pay for after I got married and got down the aisle, because he wanted to make sure he didn't have any other financial losses, which is a very true story. And then I got divorced, so I'm surprised. I'm actually I'll probably be getting an invoice from him at some point. But, his favorite comment to me was, like I said, these Charlie-isms are inappropriate and just random, but have meaning behind it. So when I annoy the shit out of him, or I do stuff like this with, relationships, his famous comment to me is, "You're a poster child for birth control." So basically, he's acting like he regrets that he had children, and maybe he did between me and my sister. But hey, it's his way of saying, stop making bad decisions and mistakes. And I'm sure people are like up in arms right now and freaking out about what I said, and using birth control as an abortion thing is not what that is. It's just him joking about the fact that I've caused him so much heartache with my poor decisions in relationships. And you know what? It's, it could be generational. It could be this. It could be whatever the case is. But it's funny to me, because as I look back on it, I can think of all those times when I'm sitting there crying my eyes out because of a relationship falling apart, and, him not knowing what to do with it, because he's just not, he's not a girl dad in that aspect. If he's like, cry, go talk to your mother. Don't talk to me about this. You need money, I'm the guy. I'm your man. But if she can deal with the emotional stuff, and which is just, it's just how we grew up. It is what it is, and good, bad, and different. It is what it is. But when he would say that, I just would remember all those times, and just the point of being like, yep, this is what it is. Thanks, Dad. Love you too. Anyway, yes, growing up in the Northeast, it's definitely, we always have, a thick coat on, because it's a take no prisoners kind of area and crew. But, if I make you laugh, I did my job. So as we know, with no expectations, I hope you do now have expectations with how to make sure that you're caring for yourself and treating yourself, and how to go into dating, and how to go into rebuilding relationships, coming out of some, or coming in fresh to new ones. So that being said, if you have any more thoughts, questions, stories for me, because I'm sure there's some pretty funny ones out there too, and this topic's a pretty hot topic for most. feel free to reach out to me on Instagram. Send me a DM at Finding Her the Show, or reach out to our website, standinformation.com. We've got a contact page on there, and we can keep it anonymous if you want to, too, and call everybody James and Jamie, because that's the best way to do it. But most importantly, I'm here for you, founders, and don't forget to like, follow, share, and just keep us going, because I love to see you every week and hope you feel the same. So I'll see you next week for Zero Fucks. Bye.